Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. Tonight we have 6 stories, from cults to possessed toys, and so much more. I hope you all enjoy them. If you do, please be sure to drop a like rating. Let's see if we can reach 500 and... Let's just see if we can reach 500 likes. Subscribing if you're new is also very much appreciated, as I post content just like this all of the time. Sit back, do whatever it is that you do to relax, and as always, I hope you all have a great night. A little over a few months ago, I noticed a change in my girlfriend, Charlotte. To go back before that, we met a few years ago when we were both working at the same crappy part-time job. This is important because long before we started dating, I knew this was a woman I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. I promise I wasn't some creepy stalker about it. I was perfectly happy being friends with her. At first, we only saw each other at work, a crappy pizza joint that only the worst people in the city seemed to visit. But every day when I got to work, she was there with a smile and a joke, sometimes a snack to share. The more time I spent with her, the more I wanted to become someone she could be proud of. At first, we really only saw each other at work. Then I started picking her up to go to the mall together. We would get coffee or dinner once a week. Then before long, we were dating. I worked hard at that job. And I've worked hard at every job I've had since I met her. She really makes me a better person, and that's not just a tangent about how much I love her. She's such a wonderful person that everyone around her just kind of improves by default. I say this because I need you to know it for what I am about to tell you next. A while back, my girlfriend, of 2 years at that point, I've known her for 4.5 now, came home from a camping trip and started acting differently. At first it was little stuff. She totally lost her appetite for a while and didn't seem to want to eat anything. We assumed it was a stomach bug, or stress from work, and she tried to dial it back to get more rest. At first, that seemed to be what she needed. Her appetite came back for a while, and she even seemed better than before. Then she couldn't sleep at night. It started slowly, with her staying up on her phone for a few minutes longer than usual, then an hour. Then I was waking up at 4 in the morning to find her pacing back and forth in the hallway of our apartment. While that was going on, remember all of this developed over the last 6 months or so. She seemed to get more spaced out and daydreamy a lot. I would come home and find her staring out the window. When I would ask what she was looking at, she would just smile and point at something I couldn't seem to see. Other times I would wake up in the middle of the night to find her staring at a wall, or just standing in a doorway not doing anything. Every time I talked to her about it, she promised me it was nothing, or that she would go see a doctor if it went on. I wanted to believe her as much as I wanted it to be nothing. After that, she started going out into the woods alone at night. It's not a big forest, maybe a 1/4 acre or so, and spread out across a few people's backyards. At first I didn't really think much of it. Like everything else, it started small and escalated. She would go out for a quick 20-minute walk right at sunset. Then it was 30 minutes, then 45, then an hour. Before long I would be long asleep before I felt her creeping into bed next to me. Other than that, her behavior didn't change. Despite hardly eating or sleeping, she was still her kind and sweet self during the day. She was loving, thoughtful, and just as intelligent as ever. She also didn't seem to be going through a lot of physical changes. A little weight loss, which worried me, but she swore she felt okay. That's really why I didn't think about it too much. She wasn't acting too different from her usual self during the day, and if all she was battling was insomnia and nausea, then she could cope how she needed to. I think a part of me was worried about stressing her out even more by bothering her about all of it too much. So I sat by and waited. That was foolish of me, in hindsight. But then again, we always tried to assume the best about each other. Then it got a lot harder to ignore. When I would kiss her in the morning, I could taste iron. Not overwhelmingly, but as if she'd had blood in her mouth for a few hours before and rinsed her mouth out. And I don't mean blood from flossing. I mean I could taste it in her mouth as if her mouth had been full of blood just a few hours prior. I started finding packages in the trash for raw steak. Sure, she could have been cooking them without me knowing somehow, but there were so many of them. I couldn't understand how she was eating that much steak in a week, especially after her problems with nausea. That was when I finally started asking questions. But I was too afraid to press very hard. Instead, I kept pretending everything was normal. We kept going about our new routine, pretending nothing was wrong until the neighborhood pets started going missing. I couldn't take it anymore. I didn't care if she spent another mortgage on steak, or even hunted down squirrels and whatnot, as long as that was making her happy, but she couldn't hurt people's precious pets. That wasn't like her, and it wasn't something I could let my girlfriend get away with either. I basically had no evidence it was her, except the shift in her behavior at night, and the occasional episode of spacing out. But something deep inside me knew. I waited up for her a few nights ago when she went on one of her nighttime strolls. When she got back, around 4 in the morning, she had blood around her mouth. The strangest part, though, was that she looked different. Her eyes were wider, more oval-shaped than they're supposed to be. Her pupils were almost gray instead of black. I sat her down on the couch and asked what was going on. Slowly, her features seemed to shift back to normal, and as they did, her eyes welled up with tears. I pulled her into my arms, and she cried while she told me what had been happening. She told me something happened after the camping trip. At least to the best of her knowledge, that's when the change occurred. She said it started pretty much the way I saw it for her, too. She couldn't sleep, started eating a lot less. Then the craving started. All she wanted was steak, and at first she was cooking it. Then she realized she wanted to eat it raw, and started doing that. Then one night on her walks, she saw a wounded rabbit. It seemed like somebody's dog or cat had bit it and done fatal damage, but not been able to eat it. She ate that rabbit, and she said it was the most exhilarating, perfect experience she'd ever had. She found that she wasn't tired during the day either when she ate the little animals in the forest. She could go a whole day without needing to eat as much. Just snacks here and there, as long as she was eating the occasional small animal from her nightly walks. But then she found that she needed more and more animals to feel okay. If she couldn't hunt enough rabbits or squirrels in a night, she felt sick and sluggish all day. She told me it didn't even feel like a conscious thought for her. In the same way I would walk to the fridge when I'm hungry. She would head out into the woods each night. All she knew was that there was something that could make her feel better, amidst all these weird changes she was going through. So she kept hunting, trying not to overdo it. She would only kill and eat exactly as much as she needed. That was where the steak came in. It was the only thing other than raw living animals that she could eat and get any sense of fullness from. But eventually the steak stopped doing it for her, and she was worried about overhunting the woods behind our house. She stopped hunting for almost a week. She said she was trying to let the local wildlife recover, but she was starving. One night during her fasting period, she got desperate and ate the dog that had attacked a 2-year-old the year before. See, she's always trying to do the right thing, even in a moral gray area. But that also became too little food very quickly. She needed more food, larger prey, so to speak. Again, it wasn't that she wanted to. The survival instinct seemed to kick in and take over. She read an article about a man who attacked a child and was let out of prison. He only lived a few miles from us. He was on the registry now, so his address was public information. She said it wasn't hard to find him. She said he made the perfect meal. According to her, humans are perfect because she doesn't need to eat as often. She said most nights she can walk through the woods, eating only the occasional small animal. Then on nights when she's extra hungry, and she's had the opportunity to prepare in advance. She looks for what she considers to be a deserving victim, and she goes after them. Dinner and community service all at the same time. That's my joke, not hers. She sobbed as she told me all this. Said she hated herself for it, but she couldn't help it. She doesn't want to be like this anymore. She wants nothing more than to live normally, go back to the way things were before whatever it was that changed her. She was telling the truth. Say what you want, but I know this woman, and I know when she's lying. She was being honest with me, and it shattered my heart to see her so sad. I told her I would help her look for a solution, some kind of cure for whatever was wrong, and that's what I've been doing. I've discovered the more she hunts and kills at night, the more she transforms at night. I don't know if it's a direct result of the hunting, killing, or eating, or if it's just that the changes are occurring over time, but I plan on figuring it out. She always looks like her usual sweet self when we wake up in the morning. But now, by the time I go to sleep, her skin has turned gray. Her eyes are huge and dark, and her fingers are long and gray. She's starting to grow claws, too. And now I can only imagine what the next stage in her transformation will be. I've been looking online for someone who can help. Obviously, it's hard to find someone who can deal with a problem like this. Someone online suggested I find a shaman, so that's what I'm going to do. I've been looking at various people's websites all morning, trying to find one that doesn't seem like a total scam. I found a few in and around my city. Try Googling shamans near me. You'll be surprised by how many results you get, and now I just need to find one we can trust. It's been a few days and we met with the shaman I found. I actually met with all 5 of them on my own first, and found the one I trusted the most. Then I took Charlotte to meet with them together. The shaman, a much older woman named Millie, sat with us for a long time, asking questions about everything that had been going on and for how long. We met in her home, a cute little multi-story townhouse in the city that was full of all sorts of fascinating things. The mantle in the room the 3 of us sat in was quite literally overflowing with picture frames. Something told me the best gift you could possibly give Millie was a picture frame, and maybe a gift card to a store that sells picture frames. There were old black and white photos of her when she was young and gorgeous with a whole host of people. Some of the people appeared in the photos a lot, some of them only once or twice. But it was clear that everyone on the mantle was very near and dear to Millie's heart. The sitting room was also packed with various pieces of furniture that seemed linked to each other only by the fond memories they must have held for Millie, as every piece of furniture in that room was completely unique. There was a French-style fainting couch at the edge of the room, a large plush leather couch, a rocking chair that looked as if it may have been hand-carved, and a delicate pink love seat that Millie sat on. Charlotte and I took the large brown leather couch, and I let my eyes wander around the room as Millie and Charlotte talked. Charlotte recounted the story about her camping trip as Millie listened intently. Millie seemed to catch something we didn't, as I still have no idea how the camping trip could have started all this. Charlotte, they were hiking through Appalachia, and camped one night on the outskirts of an old cemetery. Millie found that particularly interesting and asked, "Did you do anything y'all shouldn't have when you passed by the burial grounds? Said something rude about one of the deceased? Walked on hollowed ground without paying respects? Even spitting on a gravestone could do it." Charlotte looked horrified. "No, we would never. Everyone in the group is a history buff. We just wanted to see the old cemetery. My friend Megan wanted to research some of the names after to see if we could learn anything about them. Then we camped about a mile from there and went on our way." Millie nodded, her weathered face looking tense. "I'm not trying to accuse you of anything, sweetheart. Sometimes evil spirits get invited in by mistake. Sometimes they try to take over when they see someone they think is weak enough, but I'm just not sure that yours fits either of those options. I grab Charlotte's hand and lean forward. So what does that mean and what do we do? Can we get rid of it? Charlotte didn't do anything wrong. She would never hurt anyone on purpose, and she's still working really hard not to hurt anyone. We had told Millie about the animals, the dog, but I had asked Charlotte not to talk about the people. I know she's only doing what she has to. She knows that too, but a stranger might not understand. Even so, I think Millie knew we were holding back information. Millie eyed me carefully before saying, "It seems to me that a spirit has latched on to her. It can't fully take control because she won't let it act out the worst of its desires. If she's been able to stay contained to mostly small animals, and she's being careful not to be too greedy, the spirit won't be able to take over. But if she lets the spirit do whatever it wants, then you have a problem, dear." I did my best to keep my face a mask of calm as I asked, "What if she did hurt a person? Would it be too late?" Millie pursed her lips. "It's only too late once she no longer wants the spirit to leave. As long as Charlotte keeps fighting, you have a chance to help her. But when she gives up, it's all over." Charlotte squeezed my hand as she said, "I still want it to leave. I'm willing to do what it takes to get rid of it." Millie smiled. "You're good people, both of you. I trust you'll do the right thing." She turned to look at me directly. "I'll tell you what you have to do. But young man, it's your responsibility to be there for her through what comes next. You both have to be strong. You'll have to starve the spirit." I glanced over at Charlotte nervously. She looked as brave as ever, and I tried to find the same bravery inside of myself, but I was terrified. What if getting rid of this spirit killed Charlotte? Charlotte wasn't even looking at me. She fixed a resolute gaze on Millie. "Tell me how." Millie explained that it was really quite simple. All we would have to do is not let Charlotte hunt until it starved the spirit out. She could still eat people food, although Millie said that the only thing she's allowed to eat raw is fruits and vegetables. Meat has to be cooked. She said Charlotte will probably go through periods of being really hungry and able to eat just fine. Then there will be periods where she won't eat at all unless we allow her to hunt. Those are the moments where I have to be most cautious. Millie said I'll experience as much temptation as Charlotte does when I have to watch her suffer. Every day that goes by gets harder than the last. At first, I thought I could handle it. Charlotte has always been a tough girl, but watching her go through this has been a nightmare. I've been cooking dinner for the two of us every night. Everything is fully cooked, and I've been trying to make sure she's eating as many nutrient-dense foods as possible too. I know she's not eating as much as she should be, but every night when we sit down to dinner, she gives me this big, trembling smile, and I can tell she's eating as much as she can. I wake up every morning to see her looking tired and drawn. She tries to stay inside at night so she can avoid temptation, which means now I wake up most nights to a creature that bears a vague resemblance to my girlfriend, pacing at the foot of our bed. When my alarm goes off around 6, I wake up again to see her pale, almost haggard face smiling next to me. I don't know how she does it. Despite everything she's going through, she's still so happy and sweet. She sits next to me while I make dinner, chatting and reminding me how grateful she is for everything I'm doing for her. I keep reminding her it's for us. She's my future, so of course I'm going to take care of her. Lately, she's been asking me to stay awake at night, just for a few hours, because the cravings have been so strong. I called Millie again and asked her if this is normal, and she said it takes a long time to dislodge an evil spirit like this. She also assured me that it's very clear that Charlotte isn't allowing the spirit to take over, which gives her a much better chance of being able to get rid of it. I don't know how much longer I can watch her suffer like this, though. She seems to be growing weaker every day, and I'm afraid she'll die before the evil spirit leaves. Charlotte is sick, really sick. She's been tossing and turning in bed with a fever for the last few days. I'm worried this is going to kill her. I'm going out tonight to find her something to eat. I'll make sure it's someone deserving, but I can't risk losing the love of my life. I would rather see everyone else fall at her hands than watch her die like this. She doesn't deserve that. And I don't think I do either. Do you remember Gigapets? If the odd-sounding name doesn't ring a bell, it's because you're not in the age range to appreciate such a notable entry in the oversized book that is 90s nostalgia. As an adult in his early 30s, I vividly remember being ensnared in that perfect storm of a fad like the rest of my childhood peers. For those still reading this in a state of, huh? Gigapets were a cultural phenomena that swept the globe overnight, placing them in that prestigious club of useless BS that you have no choice but to buy. A club already populated with such brilliant contributions to humanity like fidget spinners and Pokemon cards. Keychain friendly and half the size of your standard egg, Gigapets each contained a tiny, pixelated animal of your choosing. While this selection would begin with obvious choices like dogs, cats, and gerbils, the soon-to-be marketed juggernaut would eventually offer choices like space aliens, Godzilla, and Yoda. Yes, as in Yoda, the Muppet from Star Wars. Gigapets would inevitably give way to a horde of alternating brands that would include the fan favorite that would become known as Tamagotchi. While this all might sound confusing, the basic objective would always remain the same. Your goal was to raise this tiny creature into the magical land of adulthood. This would be accomplished through a meticulous regimen of feeding, grooming, and exercise. Some pets would evolve into completely new forms to show their budding maturity, while others would just show an increase in size. Choosing to opt out of the responsibilities of caretaker would sooner or later translate into a cruel and untimely death for the fake creature. It was a fad that was near impossible to outmaneuver. Then, as if stolen by a thief in the night, the hype and craze simply vanished. Gigapets were casually discarded and forgotten by the world at large. Over the years, you'd randomly find the once object of some kid's affection at the bottom of some bargain bin at your local Walmart, until the day came when even that option was no longer available. My reintroduction into the world of Gigapet wouldn't take place at a Walmart. No, my chance encounter with the aforementioned 90s trigger would end up spiraling into something much more sinister. Hindsight is definitely 2020. Had I known then what I know now, I would have sent those pangs of nostalgia back where they came from. Don't be fooled. This story isn't about some grown man longing for the gleeful days of yesteryear. There's no glee or fondness in the words that you're about to read. This story has more in common with a nightmare. What fragments of a life that I have left have now become synonymous with absolute dread. When you're done reading this, you won't question why I suddenly stopped leaving my house after dark. You won't question my ongoing bouts with crippling insomnia. More importantly, you won't question why I just installed new deadbolts on all the doors of my apartment. This story isn't about Gigapets. This story is about Mr. Bits. Well, it seems like forever ago, there was a time when my entanglements with insomnia were willfully chosen by yours truly. This now foreign concept would play an important role in my then leisurely sleep patterns. I would stay up for hours browsing Amazon for random things, whose purchase I could justify with a new Prime account. The night it all began started like so many others, With a morning shift at work looming, I convinced myself that the time I was currently investing in online shopping was not for my own selfish needs, but Zach's. Zach was a 7-year-old son of Harper, the woman I had been dating for nearly a year at that point. Zach's birthday was swiftly approaching, and I hadn't the slightest clue what to get the kid. What began as a scroll through the various entries in the Modern Kid playbook quickly took a more in-depth turn once I decided to skip the obvious choices and spring for something a bit more unique. This online journey would bring me to a private Amazon seller titled Decade Dumps. This retailer specialized in a treasure trove of overpriced trinkets spanning back at least 4 decades, all of them categorized for easy access. I had my sights set on a slightly used Stretch Armstrong when my eyes caught glimpse of a much more promising selection. Hot 90s rare find, Gigapet kitty cat, never used, still in the box. You won't find a better deal anywhere else. This supposed deal was listed with a very non-bargain price tag of $79.85. Even with words like a rip-off pushing their way to the front of my thought train, I reverted to my nasty habit of justification. Even if there was a better deal lurking around on the internet, I would have had to invest more time and energy on finding it. With only 4 hours of sleep to spare before my alarm clock forced me back up, I hit the checkout button and closed my laptop. The package had been scheduled to arrive within 2 business days of the time that I had originally ordered the thing. At the time, I assumed that such a short window would have given me more than enough time to stay ahead of Zach's birthday party, which was to take place at the end of the month, a cluster of days that still seemed a ways out, seeing as how there was still 3 weeks left in the month. Weeks went by with no sign of Zach's birthday present. I sent dozens of emails to whoever was supposedly in charge of the Decade Dumps. There would be no response back. After a bit of digging, I found a phone number that I assumed to be for customer service. I dialed the number half a dozen times. The majority of the calls would end with a garbled sound of auditory mayhem that reminded me of one of those dial-up modems from the early days of the internet, only much louder, and a hell of a lot more distorted. It wouldn't be until the final call that I got a hold of an actual human being. I couldn't tell if the person on the other end was a man or woman, because what few words I could make out were spoken with low, monotone inflections. Already frustrated, I explained the situation regarding my missing Gigapet. Once I was sure that the problem had been successfully articulated, I sat for what seemed like minutes, impatiently pressing the phone to my ear as I waited for the individual to respond with some kind of solution. A loud, disjointed sound caused me to snap up in unexpected shock. As the noise quickly dissipated, I began to hear this low, repetitive hum fluctuating in the background on their end. I spoke into the receiver to confirm whether or not I was even talking to anyone after hearing such a strange sound over the phone. Hello? Did I lose you? I could make out breathing before the person spoke for the first time since the conversation had started. Why would I be lost? The response was oddly out of place, so much so that I just sat for a few seconds basking in my own silence. We're sold out of the kitty pet, the person croaked out from their end. What are you talking about? I said louder than I should have. It was listed on your page as available. I ordered the thing and I even received a confirmation number. The voice spoke once more. Replacement pet? Unable to make out exactly what was being said, I simply countered with the stupefied reaction that was, huh? The phone clicked off after that. When I called back, I was greeted by a secondary voice, a woman explaining to me in that ever so familiar parlance that the number I had been trying to reach was now disconnected. As the recording ended, I could feel a cold chill creeping down my spine. Something wasn't sitting well about my odd interaction with the mysterious person I had just spoken to over the phone. Even then, in those moments following the whole interaction, I could instinctively tell that I was turning onto a path in which there would be no turning back. Having no one to direct my anger toward, I compromised by typing up an email before sending the profanity-laced complaint to the good folks at Amazon customer service. I promptly gave up any and all hope of ever seeing that package and defaulted on Zach's birthday gift. I can't remember exactly what I got him, but I'm 90% sure it was some kind of overhyped gaming system that was expensive enough to nab some extra boyfriend points with his mother. The package in question landed at my doorstep nearly a month later. It took a few moments for me to even remember what the hell it was. I opened the outer Amazon Prime box only to see a tiny, cardboard box placed perfectly at the center of a flattened layer of packing peanuts. There was no outer markings on the package to distinguish it as anything worth looking at. The surface of the box was scratched up and the edges were frayed as if someone had decided to play a game of soccer with it beforehand, just for giggles. 2 items would fall out of the box as I ripped it open. The first would be a folded piece of wrinkled printing paper that appeared to be as messed up as the box it was packaged within. The uneven lettering was printed in blotchy red ink and scattered along the page's interior. Congratulations! You are now the proud owner of your very own Mr. Bits. Just because he clawed his way out of hell does not mean he won't need your attention and care. With a little love and a lot of luck, Mr. Bits will have no problem showing the world his true form. The secondary item followed the trend of creepy that was currently taking place. While the item resembled the basic look of Gigapets that I had seen in the past, its design was an immediate departure from any prior designs that I had laid my eyes on. The craptastic paint job was that of a faded gray with chipped edges. The standard issue LCD screen was encased in the center of the cheap plastic casing. Below the screen was the basic layout of buttons one would expect from the devices such a knockoff would replicate. A single alteration came in the form of an extra button placed on the upper left-hand corner of the toy. The button was half the size of its peers and painted bright red. I had to squint hard to see a tiny, faded arrow suspended above the button. The ghastly symbol led to a jumbled cluster of miniature letters that used to spell something out before being nearly rubbed out of existence. The device was adorned with more text and another symbol. The aforementioned glyph sat at the very top of the device. To the casual observer, this symbol would have been easily described as a hollow, black sphere showcasing a smaller black cross at the very top. At that moment, I would have easily fallen into the casual observer category. That would all change in the days that followed this lackluster unboxing. More on that part later. Centered at the very bottom was an enlarged block of a equally black text that read, "Mr. Bits, your digital pal." I was already teetering on the idea of gathering up all the cheap garbage so I could apathetically dispose of the whole fiasco, but like so many other tragedies in waiting, I babied out to simple curiosity. Well, its fate had already been sealed. I still felt the need to follow this train to the very end. I pulled out the clear plastic strip that supposedly kept the batteries from being used until activation. Based on my prior interactions with similar devices, I knew that the screen should have been flashing anything in the seconds that followed my removal of the transparent strip. All the buttons were then pressed in various patterns, a futile last-ditch effort to breathe life into whatever Mr. Bits was supposed to do. Nothing. Just a blank LCD screen and the frustration that accompanies the sobering knowledge of knowing that my already drafty bank account was officially $70 and blah blah cents shorter than it should have been. In a sudden burst of anger, I flung the Gigapet wannabe across the kitchen. My consolation prize would be awarded in the guise of a near unachievable trick shot that sent the crappy hunk of plastic speeding into the bottom of a trash can, inconveniently located at the furthest end of the tile-lined eating space. I went to bed that night with the simple satisfaction that I had at least done something right. A little advice about short-lived victories from a guy who considers himself to be somewhat of a brown belt in that department. They're short-lived. My double dose of reality would be hand-delivered in the head-crunching form of a debilitating migraine. I'm not twisting your chain or anyone else's when I thoroughly stress just how excruciating existence had suddenly become. The pain would begin around midnight, in those early stages. The ache was still taking baby steps around a brain cavity, trying desperately to ignore it. I was no stronger to the occasional pain fest that tended to rattle around up there every once in a while. It was a random ailment that was easily fixed by passing out for a few hours. I assumed that the rules would apply to the bouncing bundle of hurt that was about to lose its training wheels and get down to business. Well, you know what they say about assuming things. Something, something, compound word. Something, something, morals and lessons, blah, blah. Your brain is about to feel like that one girl on prom night. The crescendo busted its nut sometime around 3 a.m. I couldn't ignore the pain any longer, as I was forcefully pushed from the comfort of my warm mattress. Luckily for me and the carpet, my bedroom was the kind that came prepackaged with an adjoining bathroom a few feet away. One short, and I would have never made it down anyone's hallway. I blacked out only to wake up to a glowing effigy dedicated to the god of puke. I'm not blowing smoke, but I did blow chunks. The beating that tiny bathroom took was legendary. Somebody could have written their college thesis on how so much yuck was able to come out of a man my size. Once I was convinced that my stomach was siphoned of any and all fluids, I fell back onto the tile below me. Look where you leap was nowhere to be found in my vocabulary, seeing as how my fall was cushioned by a stagnant puddle of adjacent pea soup. I quickly got up, pulling off the marinated sweatpants. Before I could make it back to my room, I stopped dead in my tracks because that's when I first caught wind of it, the secluded source of my dismay. The pain had been excruciating. I hadn't even noticed it at first. It was then, and only then, that I could hear it. I could hear that sound buzzing in the back of my throbbing brain like a vibrating cell phone. It's hard for me to articulate the specifics of said sound. If I were to simplify it on the most basic level, I'd tell you that the sound was reminiscent of rumbling bass. You know, like the kind of vibration that you get from the subwoofer in a home theater system. And while words to describe that sound escape me, I have no problem whatsoever describing what would happen next. Before we tread any further, you should know that I'm not a drug user, nor does my drink intake consist of anything stronger than Red Bull. The only thing I had in my system at the time was the remaining portion of a 2-liter Dr. Pepper. Naturally, I was as confused as any rationally thinking human would be if they saw what I saw, suddenly materialized in the air a few feet above me. It was an arrow, a digital arrow, an image that should never have been visualized the two-dimensional confines of a video screen, and yet there it was, hanging there suspended from tangible reality as it repetitively blinked in and out of existence. The arrow glowed a dull gray, and was rendered with such detail that if you paid close attention, you could even see the hundreds of tiny pixels that it appeared to be formed from. I know that because I had to have stared at the creepy thing for over an hour. I didn't move, didn't say a word, just stood there muted, in awe of this object that shouldn't have been. Eventually I managed to summon enough fortitude to push forward. My first attempts at physical contact were displayed in a series of swats. Each time I'd watch my hand pass through it, effortlessly each time. It was only after I was exhausted from multiple attempts that the thing started blinking out, only to suddenly reappear in a new location. I began to follow the digital symbol as it used this new behavior as a means to propel itself out the bathroom and into my room. The slow journey would then extend beyond my bedroom, through the hallway, beyond the living room, and into the dark kitchen. The arrow would stop midair again, tilting so that it pointed downward at the trash can beneath. The dull light illuminating the receptacle's white plastic exterior, the arrow vanished a few seconds later, returning to wherever it came from to begin with. Another noise would then join the party, an electronic screech coming from the depths of the trash can. I reached in only to pull out what I already knew to be waiting down there. Mr. Bits. Only the screen facing me was no longer dead. I was looking down at the glowing device, positioned at the center of my palm. The image on display was a dead body laying on a table in what was either a laboratory or morgue. The incredibly crappy graphics made it difficult to decipher. The body's stomach was expanding and contracting in a series of pixelated movements. I noticed right away that the sound, the headache, both of them ceased the moment the device touched my hand. I tested this theory by setting Mr. Bits down, only to move away from it at various increments. It became immediately apparent that the moment Mr. Bits left my person, the pain would come back. The further I got away, the worse the pain got until I finally felt like I was having a full-on stroke. I went back to bed with Mr. Bits resting a few feet away on the nearby pillow. Mr. Bits went to work with me that morning. I used the word work loosely because I had spent the majority of the day huddled in my cubicle as I tried to Google my way toward some answers. It was a useless venture. There was nothing remotely available on either Mr. Bits or any company that might have had a hand in its creation. What I did get was a sound in my desk drawer, eerily similar to the sound I heard coming from the bottom of the trash can the night before. After pulling the device from my desk drawer, I could see what the fuss had been about. The body was still there, laying on the table, only now the stomach no longer looked as if it were breathing. It looked like something had burst out from the inside. Pixelated gore coated the miniature landscape. My eyes drifted down to see what had caused the digital carnage. The little creature crawled back and forth across the screen in an agitated pace. A humanoid skull sat atop a skittering base made of 6 spider-like legs. If you looked hard enough, you could see that there were 2 small eyes peering through the bony jaw that hung loosely open, as it jolted in the various directions. I did this while looking up multiple times as if the thing was expecting something from me. In the top right-hand corner of the screen was a cluster of stats. The date, the time, along with words that simply read, Phase 1. Larval form. I stared at the screen, my heartbeat thudding in my ears as if trying to drown out the sight of the grotesque creature. Phase 1? I muttered, my voice barely above a whisper. My hand trembled as I set the device down on the desk. Surely this was some twisted joke, a gag gift, something programmed by a deranged developer. But then I remembered the pain. The impossible, skull-splitting pain that only ceased when Mr. Bits was near. This wasn't just a toy. It wasn't a clever prank. Whatever Mr. Bits was, it had latched on to me in a way I couldn't shake. The thing on the screen paused in its frenetic pacing and turned its tiny, pixelated skull toward me. Its jaw opened, and text appeared on the space above it. Feed me. The command was simple, yet the implications filled me with dread. What the hell was I supposed to feed this thing? Before I could think, the screen shifted, presenting a menu with symbols that appeared to represent various items. A heart, a fish, a bottle, and a tiny skull. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the buttons. Feeding it seemed like a bad idea, but ignoring it felt worse. I pressed the button for the fish icon. The screen flickered and a low guttural sound emitted from the device as the creature devoured the offering. Its movements became smoother, more deliberate, and text scrolled across the top of the screen. Satisfied, for now. I exhaled a shaky breath and placed Mr. Bits back in the desk drawer, hoping that ignoring it might cause it to fade into irrelevance. But the moment the drawer clicked shut, the piercing sound returned, boring into my skull, I yanked the drawer open and grabbed the device, and the pain instantly stopped. My coworkers gave me odd looks, but I didn't care. I couldn't let go of the thing without suffering. The days that followed were a blur of growing dread. Every morning the creature on the screen looked different, larger, more grotesque. Its stats updated as it progressed through its phases. By phase 3, it had developed a torso and arms, its spindly fingers clawing at the edges of the screen as though testing the boundaries of its digital prison. It was clear that feeding it wasn't enough. Each time I missed one of its incessant demands, whether for food, attention, or something cryptically labeled as sustenance, the pain returned tenfold. My nights were plagued by dreams of the creature, its hollow eyes staring into mine, whispering in a voice that felt like static scraping against my brain. "Let me out." By phase 5, I noticed changes in my surroundings. Objects would shift positions when I wasn't looking. Shadows stretched unnaturally in the corners of my apartment. And then there was the smell, an acrid, metallic scent that seemed to emanate from Mr. Bits itself. One night as I sat in my dimly lit living room, the screen of the device glitched, and for a moment I swore I saw my own face reflected in its display. But it wasn't my face. It was something twisted, something wrong. Before I could process it, the creature reappeared, now nearly filling the entire screen. Its jaw opened wide and text scrolled across the top. Phase 6. Release me. "No," I whispered, my voice shaking. "I won't." The screen flickered and the creature's face twisted into something resembling a grin. My apartment's lights dimmed, and the static-like sound I'd heard over the phone that day returned. Louder, more menacing. The device grew warm in my hand, almost too hot to hold, and I felt a pressure building in my chest, a suffocating weight that threatened to crush me. With a surge of desperation, I hurled Mr. Bits across the room. It struck the wall and fell to the floor, the screen cracking but still glowing. The pain returned immediately, sharp and unbearable, but I forced myself to move. I grabbed the device, wrapped it in a towel, and shoved it into a metal box I found in my closet. Then, without thinking, I ran outside and drove to the nearest river. I hurled the box into the water and watched as it sank beneath the surface. The pain didn't stop, but I felt a fleeting sense of relief. Until I got back to my apartment. The box was sitting on my kitchen counter, dry and untouched. The screen of Mr. Bits glowed brightly, the creature staring at me with eyes that now seemed far too real. The same gut-wrenching text flashing across the screen over and over again. Phase 6. Release me. Phase 6. Release me. This isn't a warning. It's too late for that. It's a plea. If you ever see a Gigapet knockoff, a strange device with a name like Mr. Bits, don't buy it. Don't touch it. Don't even look at it. I promise. You'll thank me later. The Vagabond's Log. I am not a righteous man. I have always had a taste for wickedness, I fear. A gambler, a thief, a petty dealer, a con artist. I'm not exactly proud of it, but I go by many titles with many different professions. Hell, I'd tell you my name, but I'd have to list all of them. I blow from place to place, household to household, and bed to bed as I please. Well, until I have to leave. I take what I want and I survive. No one truly gets hurt. They might be down a few grand or so, but in all fairness, they fell for cheap tricks. It's only fair and they learn a valuable lesson. If it wasn't by me, it would have been by someone far worse. Human traffickers, gang members, loan sharks. The horrible list goes on and on ad nauseam. I've been around some truly horrible people. Being the scum of the earth, I know true evil when I see it. After a deal backfired in Arizona, my life was in severe jeopardy. Nasty, nasty business. So I packed up as quickly as I could and ran like always. I drove until my piece of crap car left me stranded in some hillbilly mountain town up in the sticks. A simple town of simple people and simple ideas. This was the promised land for men like me. Or so I thought. There's two types of locals from what I've observed. Those who are sheepish around outsiders, and those who are friendly. Too friendly for my liking. They were on the complete ends of the spectrum either way, with no in-between. You'd be a fool to trust either. I've lived a life as a liar amongst liars, and a thief amongst thieves. I could smell the rot of this place miles away. Beneath all the layers of southern hospitality and simple-minded charm, speaking from experience, places like this always have a dark underbelly. Disappearances, human trafficking, and other dealings. Now which flavor of sin is this town's choice is a mystery so far. Maybe that's why I was stranded here. I don't know if I would say it was an act of God, if there is one, but there was something here that gave me an itch. An itch I needed to scratch no matter what. I managed to land a job as a mechanic at the dingy little auto repair store on the outskirts of the town. The owner, R.D. Wallen, had a mouth on him and loved nothing more to gossip. A conspiracy theorist and overall loon, R.D. would often go on hour-long rants about disappearances and old happenings of the town. For a paranoid conspiracy theorist, R.D. was uncharacteristically trusting to hire a man who just blew into town without a dollar to his name almost immediately. He didn't believe in background checks, instead believing he could gauge a man's character by a glance. A fool, but an honest one. Most of what R.D. would say was babble. Him mistaking a plane for a UFO, or claiming to have seen the Tennessee wild man again. Though on occasion, he would actually make a little bit of sense. This here used to be Baptist country, and the churches had full pews every Sunday. R.D. said as he spit a putrid glob of chewing tobacco into the septic tank he called his dip cup, until that Hollywood elite celebrity, Lion Lysander, blew into town with his fancy car and his Gospel of Aaron all those years ago. Then all of them churches dried up and died out in a span of a few weeks. Are you seeing the picture? A drought of honest, holy men in Baptist country? People losing faith in the chapels they've come to for generations en masse. That don't happen naturally if you ask me, if you knew the disappearance statistics. So you think a washed-up geriatric rock star kidnapped all those people? I responded. Blind. So very blind. You aren't from around here, so I can forgive your ignorance. Melvin Schneitman, pastor of Anderson Creek Chapel, did disappear. The pastor of Little Sinai Church, Ben Crawford, died as well, though listed as a suicide. I'm sure you can connect the dots. But oh, there's more. Trust me, brother, there's more. Andy Abernathy, pastor of the Eveful, gone without a trace. Danny Melbrose, pastor of Mill Point Ministries, decided to mysteriously skip town, leaving a wife and 5 kids. I'd skip town too. Though he ignored that comment, I could tell by the little twitch of his bright red mustache that Artie was not amused. List goes on and on and on. It feels like me and my buddy Emerson, you've met Emerson, remember, are the only ones seeing the dots. I have never met Emerson in my life, but I let him continue his rant. Those who oppose this Hollywood agenda are dealt with by the bull's horns. Oh, I just know he's pulling the strings. That's why every church in this area is either empty or dying out, while that giant church keeps gaining new members. Satan worship, probably. Not completely sure, though. My cousin Rutherford lives kinda close to that hell church, and he tells me all sorts of stories. When Artie rants, he gets a certain twinkle in his eye. Like what? I laughed, half expecting him to shrug his shoulders. Chanting and the like. Strange services held all through the night, from the earliest in the morning till the latest at night. Oh sure, they have the clean cookie-cutter services at reasonable hours. I tell you, if they try to mess with me, they have another thing coming. Artie snarled as he put a hand on his oversized, camo-patterned handgun always at his hip. Artie was like a human cigarette, pale and thin, but I don't doubt if it hits the fan, he could use it. You think this little town could have a Waco situation? I chuckled, just to split hairs and rile him up. No, buddy. Waco was big government picking on the little guy. I know pretty much for certain that this Sinclair fella is probably backed by the government. They'll prey on our core values from the shadows. His name might as well be Rothschild, Clinton, or Bush. And another thing? Sure, he looks like a recovering junkie, but way younger than he ought to be. Adrenochrome. Look up adrenochrome. If I had to listen to another adrenochrome rant, I'd do Lysander's work for him and strangle Artie. Though I despised everyone in this nowhere town, I have grown to like Artie. He's good people. Just the hero of his own little story that he made up in his mind. He might be onto something, though. A big church that's unreasonably secluded, led by a former drug addict, his memberships to attend certain services, and goes off a religion that's splintered off from Christianity. The whole thing is just a blinking sign that screams cult in the biggest capital letters you've ever seen. And just like a divine intervention, a bright purple 1976 Cadillac Coupe de Ville, accented in a lavish gold, sped up to our lot for an oil change. The driver, a tall, handsome youth no older than 20, had a smug sneer and eyes looking for a fight. Standing around 6'4" and built like a linebacker, the man would have been imposing if not for his long, pretty curls and a thin mustache. No doubt every girl's dream. I doubt that he'd want that chiseled face of his banged up. Don't scratch the paint, he grimaced impudently, gesturing to a small borderline non-existent line on its paint job. The last mechanic did this travesty. See that you're careful with it. This ain't no schmuck's banged up car. It's the pastor's. I'd expect a little bit more humility from a pastor. Is he a pimp as well? I calmly smirked, eyeing up the gaudy car. Calling himself a pastor is humbler than you'll ever know, grease monkey. His gold rings glinted in the sun as his hands curled into a fist. Just speaking my mind, friend. It's a free country. Judging by that fancy car, you'd think he could afford a toupee with that comb-over of his. I can usually hold my tongue, but I know his type. Reckless, vicious, and violent for no good reason, but will cave when things don't go their way. People like him are easy to provoke. Whether he can actually back up this vitriol is a different story. I'd watch what you say, friend. And why's that? I'd prefer not to be talked down by a pastor's escort. You have a sharp tongue, friend. I can show you something sharper. The youth cooed in the sweetest venom, flashing the knife in his pocket. Of course, its handle was gold and pearl. I'd consider heading on, son. No need for this. Artie butted in, hand on his pistol. The frenzy in the boy's eyes never quite left, but he obviously knew he met his match, getting back in the car with an exaggerated sigh. All a misunderstanding. I know the pastor would love to see y'all in a sermon, though. We have a special service at midnight tonight for members. You should stop by as my guests. It might enlighten the darkness in your life. Have a nice day, gentlemen. The escort called, every syllable dripping with pettiness and hatred, as he slowly drove off into the distance. That's Lane Vandross, Micah's boy, Artie said solemnly, his voice missing the usual gumption. Former football star, could have gone pro, a specimen through and through. Well, until the substance abuse ruined it all. He was put through the ringer. Lysander stuck his hooks in what was left. He's Lysander's creature now. The youth pastor at that church, actually. Artie continued. I almost thought he was about to cry. A has-been football player and a has-been rock star? They're perfect for each other, I joked. But I could see that jab broke straight through Artie's heart. It's not funny. His father was a good man, and he was just a troubled boy. That pastor surrounds himself with handsome, broken youth, young men and women to be used as his makeshift groupies, calls them his young apostles. Makes me sick, Artie yelped, and for a split second, I could feel his sadness. Will he be back to start something with us? Lord knows, seeing his boy like that, all doped and glammed up on that washed-up guy's arm, it broke old Micah's heart, and his health went down after that. It killed him. An honest man dies and an evil one gets richer. The way of the world, my friend. The way of the world. Artie choked up, walked inside to his office. He'll probably be in there for a while. Curiosity killed the cat, as the old adage goes. Though I've never quite grasped this concept. Will Lane try to stab me in some back room of the church? Will some cultists sacrifice me to their god? Or will they actually have a heartfelt service and move me through scripture? Maybe, possibly all three. Regardless, I am going to the church tonight. I can't exactly explain it, but I was always the kid who tried to open his Christmas gifts early. Nobody keeps secrets from me. I am the man of mystery, and I can tolerate no contenders. I must find out for myself what is wrong with this place, or die trying. A cold and foggy night. It was the perfect time for this, if not a bit cliché. I drove through the eerie countryside roads for the longest 30 minutes of my life, insanely curvy and poorly maintained. The winding back roads were almost like a rural purgatory. I'm lucky I didn't get lost within this hillbilly labyrinth, or plummet down a fenceless incline. With all its twists and turns, it felt like I was stuck in a loop. Passing old dilapidated chapels and homes in ruin, I couldn't help but notice many of them were crudely boarded up. Crosses were seemingly torn from their steeples and signs, with these buildings being heavily defaced and ransacked. Come to think of it, I haven't seen a single cross in this entire town other than Artie's poorly faded Lion of Judah tattoo. Stranger still, poles ending in two curling prongs were placed in front of these buildings. In fact, these bidents were scattered all across the sides of the road, some crude and wooden, others of shining metal. They were like a twisted imitation of those roadside memorial crosses dedicated to fatal car accidents. Bows of golden cloth and yellow flowers accompanied many of these memorials. They weren't kidding when they called the Eternal Jubilee a bit secluded. The church was deep in the mountains, like the wicked heart of this area. Pulling up to the church fashionably late, I couldn't help but notice the size. I was a little disappointed. Truly it was massive, but everyone had made it seem like it was a looming monument. Big for this area, sure, but not the Bram Stoker castle that I was expecting. The sprawling parking lot was empty except for a scant few cars. The golden bident symbol on its steeple looked almost like a bull's rack. I'm telling you, the longer I'm here, the more sense Artie makes, and that's terrifying. Entering the lobby, there were a handful of men guarding the doors. Many of them I've seen around the town. I pushed past them into the sanctuary. There were a few people in pews, praying to themselves or reading from their Gospel of Aaron, but nothing of note. "Excuse me, sir. We need to see your membership ID," one of the men said as he shook my hand, as friendly as can be. "No need. I was invited by Lane Vandross for a special service. Now, I know I showed up late, but it couldn't be over already. This doesn't look too special to me, I uttered with the most patronizing smile I could muster. The man's eyes furrowed and nodded slowly. A small, slimy smile took the place of the wide, friendly grin. Oh, so you're the one. Come with me. The service isn't held in the sanctuary. It is for the most faithful. Why Brother Lane would let in an outsider is beyond me. Your journey to salvation shouldn't start at this level, but he speaks with the pastor's interest. One of the men said, as a hand gripped my shoulder tightly and slowly pulled me out of the sanctuary. Through the maze-like hallways and down a flight of stairs, they took me to a corridor of many doors and fluorescent lighting, much humbler than the rest of the gaudy church. Producing a key, my chauffeur unlocked one of countless doors to reveal a large room. The strong, unmistakable miasma of sweat, wine, and perfume punched me right in the face. The door behind me slammed shut with the haunting sound of a lock. As the room was dimly lit, I could hardly comprehend what I was looking at. It was like a shifting mass of arms and legs. Countless men and women, all naked, embraced each other sensually in a erotic cluster of sweat and spit. A band of naked men, covering their faces in bulls' heads, played gilded instruments to an ominous melody. Serving women, their bodies wrapped in golden chains, poured a cloying wine on the participants as they began to chant. 6 naked men, each armed with knives, lined the walls and stood unsettlingly still. Their faces were obscured by the darkness, yet their athletic frames were as clear as day. They'd be quick, too quick for me. Standing tall and menacing, I could swear their flickering shadows looked like ancient hoplites. Crested and horned panoplies danced across the walls, only to wither back into mundane shade and shadow. Panic and fear can pollute the mind, playing all sorts of tricks, but I know what I saw. A troop of castrated men, all dressed as some sort of nymph or satyr, drunkenly danced around the congregation in a circle. Golden bands and circlets of thorns lined their arms and brows, with their legs contorted awkwardly by their hoofed stilts. Every movement had to be agony, yet they stomped, twirled, and gyrated wildly, singing through slurred and painful hymns. An unending smile was plastered to each face. 4 older men were bound to podiums by gilded chains, each bearing an ornate lantern. Their eyes and mouths were covered by golden cloth, tightly wound around their heads. Laurel crowns rested upon their brows, and bullhorn codpieces covered their genitalia. Their fleshy, pale bodies were crisscrossed in many gruesome lashes and bite marks, bobbing their heads slowly in tune with the beat. You could hear them faintly yet joyfully humming to themselves. A serving woman, her nails long and sharply pointed, cruelly raked a terrible gash into one of the bound elder's abdomen. The man's painful howl blossomed into a gleeful purr as she pressed her finger deep into the wound. Dear God, Artie was right. I've seen a lot in my time, but nothing can accurately describe the pure disgust and fear I felt. I needed to keep calm. By God, keep calm. And from the darkness, Lane Vandross slinked forward, his nipples and navel pierced in gold. A strange necklace of golden coins rested in between the mighty horns of a bull obscenely tattooed to his chest, with a beautiful woman and a petite man on each arm. Lane blew a burning cloud of strange-smelling smoke into my face. Welcome to our jubilation, friend. What is this? I asked, quieter than a whisper. This is freedom, he responded as he squeezed the flesh of his 2 lovers. Everyone in this pit of sin went quiet, and reared their heads to stare in my direction. Why show me this? Why bring me here? You are troubled. We were just like you, until our souls were let free. Society and their false gods try to crush you beneath their heel, keep you weak and chained. Our God is liberation. He abhors normality and oppression, for he is a God of freedom and love. But don't worry, friend. The pastor will forgive your blasphemy, for he knows you. There has to be some kind of mistake. I'm not from here. I don't know any of you. I don't want any of this. I stammered, trying my best to hold my ground. Don't you wish to be free? Out there they control everything, but here we can do whatever we desire, for that is freedom, Lane asserted before delivering a hard punch to a bound elder's jaw. The older man went limp for a second, only to hum to the melody louder in a gracious haze. I tried to choke out a response, only for Lane's smile to grow greater. Gently rubbing his hand along his male lover's ear, Lane ripped his golden earring free without a second thought. For true freedom, nothing should be denied. Instinct is law, and every desire should be acted upon. This is the way of the bull. Are you bull or sheep, friend? Slave or master? I'm a mechanic, a simple nothing mechanic, I retorted, trying my best to locate another exit to no avail. But the pastor saw. He stuttered, almost like a confused child. Judging by Lane's cadence, his mind was muddled by some form of stimulant. Your pastor saw nothing. I am a mechanic. Nothing more, nothing less. You are mistaken. I will never speak of this night again, I swear. Just let me go, I protested with the last drop of confidence I could muster. Then why come? Lane murmured, struggling to find his words through the thick brain fog. As he put out his strange cigarette on the woman's arm, without making any sound, the woman barely even winced. You could see a great sadness in her eyes, though. A sadness not even the thick veils of debauchery and intoxication could hide. I was curious, just very curious about your religion. I don't know, I just wanted to see it for myself. It was a mistake. This is all a mistake, so I think it's time. My ramblings were interrupted by Lane's ghastly blare. It was a sickly, unnatural sound. More cackle than wheeze and more roar than cackle. I think it was a strained laugh, a rotting laugh of a boy who's been rotten to his very core. Almost stumbling over, Lane caught himself on his young male lover, viciously digging his long nails into the man's flesh. A dark trickle of blood now stained Lane's hand. Lane began to obscenely flick his tongue, rasping for air in between his labored giggles, bearing most of his weight down on his two petite lovers. It was evident that they were struggling to keep Lane upright. Where did that sharp tongue of yours go, friend? No joke? No remarks? I was at least hoping you'd be more amusing. Not so funny when there's no jackass with a gun protecting you, and the pastor sees something in you. A sad joke. You know what I see? Just a coward hiding in a brave man's shadow. Well, the smug smile never parted during his rant. Lane's eyes looked like he was about to cry. His mouth screamed of bravado and damnation, while his eyes whispered of doubt and sorrow. Lane, this was a mistake. I think you need to sit down. You don't seem well. Let's just calm down and talk this out, okay? Pity graced my voice for the first time in years. Artie was right again. Lane was just a boy turned into whatever this is. A mistake, a mistake, a mistake, a mistake, true enough. The arrogance to come here to mock us. I knew you were nothing from the start. Lane's telltale anger started to bubble with his ecstatic smile shrinking into a sour frown, aggressively pushing aside the man and woman clinging to his impressive form. Lane yanked a small shiny object from a podium. Flick. Lane Vandross, now with knife in hand, scuttled towards me. His movements were jittery, and his pupils heavily dilated. In that moment, he seemed anything but human. His drunken stupor had turned into a primitive rage, drooling all over himself with a beastly hiss. The tall, handsome man was gone, and a Neanderthal stood in his place. "Thank you, Brother Lane. That will be enough," a high-pitched voice called out from the darkness. The leading musician removed his bull's head, revealing an older man with haunting green eyes and a silver-gold comb-over. His nails were lacquered in gold, with many bracelets and rings gently clinking like a warning rattlesnake's tail. Descending from the stage, the servants draped a robe of golden snakeskin around his emaciated form. The congregation, groveling, tried to caress and kiss even the ground he walked on. Lysander Sinclair in the flesh. He's worse than I could ever imagine. Like the flick of a switch, Lane snapped out of his murderous gaze, throwing himself to Lysander's feet. Lane seemed deathly afraid of this little old man. Running his fingers gently through Lane's hair, Lysander then painfully yanked a handful of auburn hair from Lane's head before delicately kissing him on the cheek. "Still yourself, Brother Lane. We have a friend in our midst. Need we discuss hospitality again?" "No, Pastor." As Aaron cast the golden calf of his liking, so did the bull of the golden horns cast humanity to his liking. Man made God, and God made man. We are one. And pray tell, why do you run so, O man of many names? We are far from Arizona, child. Do you yearn for a true home?" the older man asked, approaching me ever so slowly. "You know nothing about me." "Oh, the bull of the garden horns tells me many things. His muses come to me through dreams. Ever since I was a little boy, I was always their favorite, giving me the prettiest of coins. You would fit right in with us. We will be your family. We will be your home." Lysander chimed, his voice almost like a songbird's. "Your manservant threatened to kill me," I squawked, half sob and half laughter. "I apologize for Brother Lane's brutishness. He invited you here with the intention of giving you to the rack, but I will not let that happen to you, friend." His tone was almost childish, always with that horrible melody. I was tired of running, tired of lying, tired of trying to survive. The only thing left was hate in my heart. True, unbridled hate for this scrawny old man talking down to me. I spat at him with the most disrespectful and disgusting glob I could cough up, coating his pristine robe in slime. "Go screw yourself, old man. Do your worst, junkies." I spat defiantly again. Either way, I was probably going to be killed. If I die, I die knowing I wounded his pride. "We were wrong about him, Pastor. He is beyond saving. Give him to me and he will suffer greatly for that," Lane blustered. Spinning around wildly, Lysander gave Lane a nasty backhanded blow. With his calm demeanor melting, Lysander seemed almost animal in that instant. "Wrong, wrong. Do not presume to speak to me of what is wrong, boy. The muses speak through me. The bull speaks through me. Gods decide what is right and what is wrong. Do not forget who raised you up, boy. Now get out of my sight," Lysander screeched. The many rings of Lysander left unsightly marks upon Lane's cheek. Like a whipped dog, Lane slinked back into the darkness. Lysander's gaze focused back onto me, regaining that hideous, scarred smile. "I know what you are. You are lost, child. So very, very lost. Deep down, you're afraid of those beautiful flaws that make you you. We made God and God made us. We are divine. Your flaws are divine. Your desires are divine. You know nothing about me. No one does. Not even your God." I was completely and utterly speechless. There was absolutely no way anyone could comprehend what was happening. It was like whiplash. The naked cultist continued to stare, almost entranced, deathly still surrounding the pastor. Producing a gold coin from his robe, the pastor smiled and gestured toward me obscenely, unnaturally shiny. The coin was engraved with a bull on its head and a naked woman on its tail. Can't make up your mind? You're a gambler, man of many names, a slave to chance, like many of our herd. So I say, let fate decide by the flip of a coin. Heads, you walk free by the mercy of our God. Tails, I let Brother Lane do as he wishes. With a lackadaisical flip of his thumb, Lysander launched the coin into the air. All light seemed to be consumed by the coin's shimmer, concentrating into a blinding dot. Catching the coin with an audible thud, Lysander's grin widened and widened as his frantic eyes relaxed for a split second. My legs felt numb and my head pounded with dread. I have had a few brushes with death before, but nothing like this. You're free to go. We'll keep in touch. Brother Lane, do you mind showing our new friend out? See you next sermon, man of many names. I've worked at this bar for the last year and a half. It's been just like every other bartending gig I've had before. Get some regular drunks who wait at the door for you to arrive for your morning shift. Young college kids trying to use their fake IDs on nights when we have cheap specials. And bumbling idiots who are only looking to cause a ruckus. That was all until about 6 months ago when I began experiencing events that are not only weird, but make me want to believe in the paranormal. I'll give you some background as to who I am and the place that I work at. My name is Anthony, but most of my coworkers and regulars just call me Ant. I'm 23 years old and have been working in the service industry since I was 17, so I've seen my fair share of stuff while working. I won't bore you with details of the past places I've worked because there is nothing noteworthy to say about them. I also won't give out the name of the place I am currently at because I don't need any crazy people online trying to visit me. I will say it's a local dive bar, not on the best side of town, but also not the bad side of town either. Not much to write home about on the inside. The bar top seats about 12 people. We've got a pool table that runs on quarters, and a small TV we keep up in the corner for big sporting events. We get a wide variety of people coming in, but they are usually on a schedule, so it's easy to predict what type of crowd will come when. Morning shift is usually populated by locals from the baby boomer generation that like to sip on Budweiser and Jameson. During the weekdays, the night shift is typically pretty slow, and consists of those same morning dwellers sleeping on the bar top and needing a cab called for them. On the weekends, we usually get a solid bunch of college kids from the local state school who like to come for the cheap beer and special on red-headed slut shots. Like I mentioned before, I've begun dealing with something at work that nobody else seems to understand other than me. Around 6 months ago, there was a new guy that came in during one of my morning shifts. I was working solo like usual, because we don't often get that many people on weekdays. He's about 5 foot 10 inches tall, looked about 30 years old, and was wearing dark khaki pants, a black dress shirt, tan shoes, and a white blazer with multicolored large polka dots on it. He didn't seem like a weird guy when I first interacted with him. He politely asked for a Miller High Life and a cold pint glass to go with it. He would then sit there for exactly 3 hours, stare forward, and only break his gaze or talk to anyone when I asked him if he needed another beer. He would have anywhere from 12 to 15 beers per sitting, but would never show any sign of intoxication. He did this every day for a month straight at the same time every morning that I was working. After a month was when things began to change. He would still come in at the same time and in the same outfit that day, but this time he ordered something different with his Miller High Life. He ordered a shot of 151 proof rum, which I found to be a little odd because people offered to buy him shots in the past, but he always ignored them. When I gave him the shot, he took a lighter out of his pocket and lit the shot on fire. He then asked for a double shot of rum, so I gave it to him just to see if he was really gonna drink all of it. When I gave him the double shot, he instantly threw it on his chest, splashing the alcohol all over his clothes and face. He then took the lit shot and threw it in the exact same spot, igniting his whole body in an instant. He began to char and turn a sickly, blackish, reddish amalgamation of flesh and fire. His face was the first to start seeing any serious deformities. His left eye was beginning to wither out of its socket and dropped out like a pinball going into the starting slot. His ears crisped up as if they were slices of potatoes in an air fryer. It was all very reminiscent of the melting of the Nazis in that one Indiana Jones movie. I began to panic because of course I'd never been trained to deal with a customer committing suicide before. I looked around at the couple of other patrons in the area, but they didn't seem to notice anything. They just kept laughing and joking with each other while they sucked on the teat of their bottles. I ran to grab the fire extinguisher from the back, and when I got back, I closed my eyes and started blasting at him with no regard for anything or anyone around me. When I opened them up, I saw the bar top and some of my customers covered in extinguisher foam, but I didn't see any sign of the polka dot man or any burn marks made by the flames. The regulars all just laughed and busted my balls about, spraying my white foam on them. I asked them about the fire and they told me I just suddenly freaked out, grabbed the extinguisher and foamed them. I gave them all a free round for their trouble, but I just couldn't get over the fact of how it all felt so real to me. When I left that day, I just hoped I would never have to see the polka dot guy again, and that he was just a weird daydream that my mind wanted to make up. The very next day, he walked in right at 11:35, just like he had for the last month before. He sat down, ordered a Miller High Life, and stared forward. I had a 1,000-yard stare on him from the moment he stepped through the threshold of the doorway. I figured I had to have imagined what happened the day before because fact was that the man who burnt to a crisp in front of my eyes was now sitting in my gaze without so much as a scratch on him. After he ordered his beer from me, I began to question him about what happened the day before. I asked if he was okay, if he went to the hospital, how he got out of the bar without me seeing. He wouldn't answer a single thing I said, and just looked forward with those soulless pale blue eyes. The only words that would leave his mouth were Miller High Life between every few questions that I'd ask. Once I realized that talking to him was pointless, I just placed the cold bottle in front of him and watched him out of the corner of my eye for the shift. He never did anything out of the ordinary, for him anyway, and at 2:35 sharp he asked for his check. I gave it to him, he paid, left a 30% tip, and began walking to his car. His car was parked on the other side of the road in perfect view of the propped open door. I watched as he walked to his car, unlocked it, settled down in the front seat, adjusted his mirrors. Then he turned his head to look at me. He never had much of an expression on his face when he was in the bar, mostly just a blank face of an emotionless void. No expression of malice or joy has ever stricken his face. Until he looked at me from the driver's side window of his beat-up 1998 Toyota Camry. He had a wide grin on his face, one that curled at the corners of his lips, similar to that of the Grinch from the old Dr. Seuss cartoon. Although his smile was tall and wide, his teeth never showed. It was as if he was trying to hold something on the inside of his mouth, while experiencing a renowned feeling of ecstasy. His eyes told a different story. They showed the expression of fear. His eyebrows raised so high that they nearly touched the base of his already receding hairline. Eyes squinted as if he had just gotten a fistful of sand thrown directly in them. We maintained eye contact for what felt to me like an eternity while he reached into the glove compartment of his car. He pulled out a small 6-shooter revolver that looked like it couldn't have been any more than a pea shooter. We keep a rifle below the bar, so I knew that if he tried anything funny, that I would be able to tag him before he could even step out of the car. Although he didn't make any movements to the door handle or anything like that, he was just there keeping his eyes locked with mine while he slowly pushed the gun towards his left shoulder. He fired a shot, but the gun made no sound, and I could see as the bullet passed through the flesh of his shoulder and out through the back side of the driver's seat. Faster than I could even think, he placed the gun on his right shoulder and did the exact same thing. He then followed with his left and right kneecaps, leaving the car door flooding with blood. For his fifth shot, he placed the gun on the side of his cheek and let the shot go. His smile was now extended even further on the left side of his face, now stretching all the way to the back of his ear. Throughout the entire process, he never broke eye contact with me. It was like he wanted me to watch, and he only wanted me to watch. I still see that same face every time I close my eyes. It has been burned into my memory for as long as I live. For the final shot on his revolver, he placed the gun directly on his temple and pulled the trigger. I watched as the expression on his face left, and his body sank lower and lower into the recesses of his car. I immediately ran to go check on him and call an ambulance. But just as it was with the fire extinguisher, I opened the car door and there was no body, no blood, no gun, no sign that a person had ever even been in the car. At this point, I was petrified to come into work. I called in sick for the next few days to avoid the man and try to make any sense of what was happening to me. Was I going insane? Was I having a schizophrenic episode? Had I been recently drugged with a strong psychedelic? After 4 days of sick time, I was running low on money and had no further answers. I knew the rent was coming up next week, and I needed to start making some quick cash again. So I asked my coworkers if the polka dot man had come in at all. They said they hadn't seen anyone that looked like the guy I described to them. I figured that meant he was gone for real this time, and I could safely return back to work. The next week I worked 5 days: Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday, with all of them being morning shifts except for Saturday. That week, without fail, the polka dot man routinely came in and found a gradually more sadistic way to end his own life. On Monday, he used one of the bar toothpicks to execute himself by stabbing thousands of small wounds starting with his chest, then face, then stomach, and then his arms and legs until he was nothing but a deep crimson figure, continually spilling out on the bar top. Tuesday, he took the CRT that sits on the top right corner of the bar and placed it on the nearby pool table. He walked calmly to the opposite side of the bar, about 15 or so feet back, and ran full force with his head into the old TV. This day made me realize that I am not going totally insane. When he first shattered the screen, it caused a surge in electricity, causing his body to convulse for a few minutes after impact. But the bar also had a few seconds where the power went out. Once it came back, some of the patrons asked what happened to the lights, and thought there may be a storm outside, but it was clear as anything. Now I know that to a degree, other people can see the effect the polka dot man has on the environment, but I am the only one who seems to actually see him. Thursday was an interesting day because it was the first one where he broke his routine. It wasn't a huge change, but he brought with him a newspaper, and instead of his usual sit and stare, he read for the duration of his stay. After he finished reading, 3 hours later, he took the newspaper and folded them up into razor-thin, sharp triangles. He took the paper and began to slowly make cuts all over his body in the same order as he stabbed the toothpicks. He also acted differently this time than he did with his whole death by 1,000 toothpick stabs. He was looking right at me this time with that same smile that he had in the car, those same dead and narrow eyes, that same absurdly wide smile, and the same cartoonishly raised eyebrows. I couldn't look away as he cut himself. Once he got to his stomach, the wounds began to get deep enough to allow for more than just blood to leave his body. He dug the paper into the base of his stomach as far as it would allow, before his hand went inside, and he then sliced vertically up his body until the paper met with his Adam's apple. I was expecting what I had seen in the movies before, the usual intestines and guts and flesh to start spilling out from him. Instead, what I was met with was a flooding sea of blood exiting the cavity in the middle of his body. He laid sunken back with his head slouching off the back of the bar seat, and once the liquid was done flowing, I looked inside of him and found nothing. It was hollow. No organs, no bones, nothing. There were only two thoughts running through my head at this moment. If I turn away, then this thing will disappear, and that now would probably be my only chance to investigate whatever this was. I climbed over the bar, ignoring the chuckles and pestering from the few regulars that sat in their stools, and got closer to the open hole. Before my hand could touch it, a hand reached up to grab my wrist with the force of a Doberman closing its teeth into an intruder. With a petrified look on its face, it said only 3 words to me: "Please turn around," in a soft, almost whispering tone. I didn't know what else to do but comply and turn around. By the time I turned back, the thing was gone, and my regulars began asking for their free round for having to deal with my weird BS. Friday is the reason why I'm writing this today. It came back like always, but almost immediately after I served him his typical Miller High Life, he asked to buy an entire bottle of Chambord. We're mostly a beer and shot type of bar, so the Chambord has been sitting on the shelf unopened since the establishment of the bar. I gave the bottle to it mostly because I knew the bill would be higher, and he always tipped at least 30%, so I was looking for that tip. Once he got a hold of it, he opened his mouth as wide as it could possibly go, and began to insert the bottle inside. It struggled at first, but after a couple of minutes, was able to use the bottle's force to rip open and expand the size of his jaw. The lower half became unhinged, and just hung off the bottom of its face, all while the shape of his face transformed into a wide, endless cavern struggling to fit the perfectly spherical glass inside. After another minute of struggle, the glass shattered and forced deep and sharp cuts all along the inside of its mouth and face. The contents of the liquor spilled all over its body, the countertop, and the floor below us. Meanwhile, it did not stop ingesting what was left of the glass. Shards were continuously thrown carelessly into the chasm, as if it were a teenage boy popping Tic Tacs before a first kiss. I could not do anything but stare in awe until every last shard was erased from existence. Rage began to fill me from the inside out. I could not stand to see this thing come back again, and I decided then and there to attack it with one of the pint glasses that was nearby. I picked up the glass and smashed it over the side of its head, causing an immediate response from it in return to right hook me in the opposite side of the head. From what the regulars told me, they said I suddenly blacked out and they called for an ambulance to come get me. 2 days ago I woke up in the hospital bed, surrounded by the only people that ever cared about me, my local degenerate drunks. They filled me in how I got there, and told me the doctors said I blacked out from exhaustion and should take a few days off of work. To my surprise, there was no injury on my head and no pain to speak of. I knew I had to have been hit pretty hard to be knocked out on impact, and it was caused by the impact of the bar top. I'd have some sort of sign to show for it. I got checked out that afternoon and came back home to think of a plan to beat this thing or die trying. The plan was very simple, and would end my suffering one way or another. I will go into work today as usual. I told my boss I was feeling fine and just needed a day's rest, and I will wait for that thing to come in at 11 as usual. Once it sits down and has their precious Miller High Life in front of them, I will grab the rifle below the bar and put a bullet right between that sick son of a bee's eyes. If that does not work, and it looks like it will retaliate against me like it did before, I will turn the rifle on myself and pull the trigger. I cannot live in this consistent torment. I fear that even if I move or get a new job, that the polka dot man will follow me there. I'd rather be dead than have to experience this horror. My shift starts in an hour. I'll come back and give an update if I am successful. If not, I would like you all to know that I am not upset about ending my life. I'll finally have peace. Nobody writes about the grinning prince. The thing about urban legends is that while they are supposedly an oral tradition, people love writing about them online. You can pretty much trace the whole Polybius myth from one message board post to dozens of podcasts over the course of 25 years. Not the grinning prince, and not even the show. Not really. Everyone who was a kid in the NYC area in the 70s and 80s remembers this TV show. It was the most popular kids program on a local channel, the one that showed baseball. But somehow it never went to other markets, and even weirder, nobody in the area recorded it. By the time it went off the air in '84, plenty of people had VCRs, but no matter how much you search YouTube, you won't find clips of the garden full of psychedelic puppets being herded by singing hippies. Over the years, a few people posted clips, but they were pulled almost immediately. You will never see a full episode posted, so you will never find the roster. You will never hear the puppets say the one thing they absolutely said at least once in every episode. All things serve the grinning prince. The roster was the end of the show, when the hippies would put down their guitars and sing, a cappella and off-key. 4 names, for example. We see Jordan and Kyle and Carrie and Julie and you. Everyone knew the rules. At some point, an older sibling or a friend would warn you. When they said your name in the roster, you had to place the thing you loved the most on the ground in your yard, with a letter asking the prince for a gift. If you did, you would get your gift. If you didn't, first the grinning prince would warn you in your dreams that night. If you still disobeyed, the prince would visit your bed the next night. If you disobeyed again, nobody knew. Something bad. My name, the real one on my birth certificate, is uncommon. My nickname was and is marginally less weird but still unpopular, so I never got called on the roster. My cousin Davey wasn't that lucky. He tried not to cry when I asked him where his Wayne Foundation playset was. He had just gotten it for Christmas and I was incredibly jealous. If any of you collected Mego superheroes, you would understand. He solemnly explained that he ignored the prince when he dreamt of him. The next night, Davy woke up to a withered, 6-fingered hand rising up from the side of his bed reaching for him. He spent the rest of the night in his parents' bedroom screaming. In the morning, while his mom was doing laundry, he went in the yard and dug into the frozen ground. I was 4. He was 6. That conversation is my earliest, clearest memory. There is no reason why I should have cared so much about finding the show as an adult, but I am stubborn and nosy. Being stubborn and nosy aren't the worst flaws you can have, but they have cost me most of my relationships over the years. This gives me a lot of free time. I have been selling stuff, mostly original comic art, at horror and sci-fi conventions for 20 years. 20 years of pestering the other vendors for a copy of an episode of the show. Usually conventions are amazing for lost media like this. I have a 4K print of the unaltered versions of the original trilogy, and a VHS with what appears to be an authentic 20 minutes of London After Midnight, but I could never find a copy of this show. 3 months ago, at the big con in San Diego, a pink-haired girl in her mid-20s came to my booth. She was holding a disc with the show's name on it. I didn't have a DVD player with me, or at home, not for 10 years, but she only wanted $20 for it. I don't know how she knew who I was, or that I was looking for the show. but she looked incredibly familiar, which made no sense. I didn't know any women her age, pink-haired or otherwise. When I got the disc home and finally found a laptop to play it, I understood where I knew her from. She was the girl without the guitar. Her clothes and hair were obviously different, but she hadn't changed in 40 years. When the roster came around, I was sort of expecting it, but it still felt like there was ice going down my spine when they said both of my names. Obviously, at this point, the logical thing to do was just put my guitar in the yard. But I'm stubborn and nosy. I woke up screaming on my bathroom floor. I don't know how I got there. Even immediately after I woke up, I couldn't remember the prince's face, only his hand, the 6 fingers ending in long nails that burn like candles. So the next night I put a 1974 black Fender Telecaster Custom, same model that Keith hit a fan with on the Stones' '81 tour. Outside in the yard with my letter. I live alone and was more freaked out than curious. I left the television on for company. Around 3 a.m. I woke up with the sense that I was being watched. The TV was an old school snowy screen, like we would get when the cable went out. When the hand rose up from the side of my bed, I don't know if I screamed. I only know that I froze. I came up slowly, no particular hurry. The fingernail candles casting shadows against the wall. It stank of soil and decay. It didn't move like a person. It didn't move like anything in this world. Even in my terrified states, I was able to recognize it. It was claymation. I didn't bother getting dressed before running for my keys and wallet and bolting out of the house. I ended up at White Castle, the only place open, frantically doing an image search. I was filled with cosmic dread, but I was still stubborn and nosy. I found it right away. I was right. The thing that was in my bedroom was the old intro animation from the Saturday night horror movie on the same channel that aired the show. A 6-fingered hand rising from a creepy swamp. When the sun came up, I went home to find my guitar exactly where I left it. My offering had been rejected. Of course it was. I had tried to cheat. Later I would go into the yard dragging the thing I really loved the most. The only painting my dad ever finished. A lighthouse at the cusp of a storm, guiding the ships in. I have had it on my wall my entire life. The following morning it was gone, along with my note. That night there was a package at my door. I opened it and found 3 photo albums. Once I knew that the whole thing was real, I could have asked for anything in the note I left. The grinning prince could appear in my dreams, and the host of the show could appear ageless. Then I could ask to be rich, or young, or immortal, or whatever. That's not how I'm wired, though. For my gift, I wanted 3 answers. What was the point of the show? Why did it stop? What happened to the kids who couldn't or wouldn't leave the offering? I sat on my couch and opened the first album. 1970s pale gold and olive tones shine in the pictures. I saw the hosts, their names, their real names, not the ones from the show, were handwritten above them. Carmen and Patricia. I touched the picture and suddenly I'm not me. I'm Carmen. We are puppeteers. It is 1971, and we are in NYC trying to get a job with the public television kids show that was somehow becoming a huge hit. Our manager gets us an interview with a local channel. Station management pitches us our own show, but there are rules, very specific rules. We have to prove our loyalty to station management. We have to pledge ourselves to the smiling presence lurking behind everything. It seems like a game. Patricia and I sacrifice the puppets we made ourselves in 6th grade. We promise each other that we will ask for the same gift. For our show to go on forever. I don't know what Patricia really asked for. It wasn't to stay young. At her wake she was an old lady, and I was the same, like always. My mind is as fresh as my body. I can't forget anything we did. I hear every kid's name that I called. I see the ones that didn't listen. I snap the book shut and open the second one. This one isn't just pictures. It is a collage of 80s and 90s photos, newspaper clippings, magazine articles. They swirl into a vivid montage of what happened after the show stopped. It wasn't needed anymore. One generation of kids in one city was enough. 4 names called a day, 5 days a week, for 10 years. Every kid grew up to serve the prince in their own way. They gave him other names and made up party games to summon him. They put versions of him in 80s album covers and 90s comic books and 2000s creepypasta. They even backwards masked a worship service into a Philadelphia-based teen dance show, also not on YouTube. Every bit helped. All things serve the grinning prince. I didn't open the last album. Not at first. I changed my mind. I didn't want to know what happened to the other kids. The ones who wouldn't listen. Nothing good could come from seeing that. But I'm stubborn. And nosy. I really tried not to open the album. I tried to ignore my curiosity. It lasted a day. I spent the whole day wandering through Midtown. I could have asked for so many things besides knowledge. I've never been to Europe. Billy Joel's house is for sale. I haven't had a hairline since Clinton was in office. I could be like Carmen, with an eternally young face and pink hair, handing DVDs to unsuspecting idiots at conventions. But no, I had to have answers. So I saw the symbols of the prince embedded in billboards and corporate logos. I heard the demonic cadence of his hymns and songs playing in cars. I saw the TV station looming above me on East 42nd Street, and I knew who the station management are and who they serve. By the time I got home, I was tired of knowledge. I was tired of everything. It was time to open the third album. I saw their faces, defiant. They were the kids who didn't care if they got sent to the principal. The kids who got sent for evaluations and wouldn't cooperate with the therapists. The kids who wouldn't take their meds. The prince hates defiance. They would go to school and not get there, leave their friend's house but never make it home. They wouldn't tribute the grinning prince willingly, so they were taken to his realm, where they could be of use. That's what he wants in the end. The children's shows and the scary movies and the backwards masked records, they all serve the same purpose. He needs an audience. I thought I was stubborn, but these are the stubborn ones, and this is their penance. They went to a dark place where the only light is a glowing yellow smile that demands applause and adoration, and above all, compliance. This is their purpose now. These kids who couldn't follow the rules. All things serve the grinning prince. A few hours ago, I left Aspen hauling an unplanned return load through a mountain range I've never been through before. As a trucker, surprise loads and switch-ups in the plans are no big deal normally. But tonight, my GPS led me down a weird road, maybe to avoid construction or traffic. I have no idea. I stopped for food and gas while I was on the main road leaving the city, but after driving a while, I had to make a stop to fix my windshield wipers. Despite the radars looking clear for the day, I found myself in a slowly growing snowstorm. My truck chugging loudly between the unfamiliar rocky cliffsides, reaching high above me towards a slowly whitening sky. The sun a slowly waning beacon of hope as the snow began to pick up, kicking violent gusts of icy tree limbs and snow. I pulled over on an old road stop that sat near a few fallen trees and some huge imposing boulders. It had a small parking lot next to a long-since abandoned service station that sat pretty close to the main road. When I got out to fix the wipers, I lingered for a moment halfway out the door. watching as the snow seemed to form small tornadoes all around me, encircling the mostly empty parking lot, dancing with the ravaging winds that began kicking up clouds of snow that glittered in the truck's headlights. I got out and climbed up the side of the hood enough to get the wipers unstuck from their positions. On the way back down, the headlights took my sight in a flash for just a moment. That's when I saw him. A silhouette in the snow just out of sight, maybe 100 feet away. I hadn't noticed them before, but a pair of headlights were on next to the obscured figure. My heart skipped a beat as my eyes barely adjusted in time to see him. I was suddenly hyper-aware of the sounds of spiteful and angry wind, tearing its way along the now snow-covered cliffs that surround me. It felt like my head was going to spin off into the wind at any moment. I choked out a weak, "Hello?" that barely made itself heard over the bitter whispers of the wind. Nothing. I slowly approached. At the time I thought maybe someone needed help. Maybe they didn't hear me. When I got to the man, he was standing facing his car. He was on the passenger side and the door hung slightly ajar. The snow had already started building up inside the car and around the man's feet. "Sir, are you okay?" I managed to squeak out as I grabbed the man's shoulder, fully expecting him to be frozen solid. I managed to get him to turn, and at this point I wish I never had. The man wasn't frozen. Despite the snow slowly building up on and around him, he turned and looked at me, his features gaunt and a grizzled and gray beard hung low and dripped with icicles. He almost looked normal, but his eyes, like two soulless white orbs that were suspended in cavernous black holes on his lost-looking face. As soon as I grabbed his shoulder, he practically jumped up a foot in the air. I tried to signal to him, but he wouldn't react to my words or finger snapping. He was either blind and deaf or catatonic. His throat cleared and he had to fight not to upheave as he spoke frantically to me. "It's in wind. It's in the wind." He kept saying it over and over. He got louder, slowly breaking into a hysteric, "It's in the wind. It's in the wind. Hides in the snow. It hides in the snow." The man started thrashing about in a rabid state, spitting and frothing at the mouth, screaming upwards into the sky and letting his fear and hatred be carried through the mountains by the wind. I only watched long enough to see his skin was beginning to flake off in frozen chunks. As the wind began to rend across his body, the headlights of my truck were starting to falter. Something was wrong. I ran frantically back to my cab. The sound of the old man's screams of terror slowly faded into the howling and rushing winds that pursued me. I could feel the ice starting to pierce my coat and flesh, trying to reach into my veins. And now here I am, watching the snow slowly build up on the hood of my truck from the inside. The power died a little bit ago. Sometimes I see the old man wandering about in the blizzard. Once he came over to my truck, he tried the handle of the passenger side door for about 2 minutes, rambling and muttering to himself slowly. When he was close, I saw most of the skin and meat on his skull has been torn off by the wind. The muscles are still keeping him going, but that's about it. His eyes were searching. His mouth was trying to ramble while blood and meat slowly churned out in an ooze from his mouth. I called the police, hospitals, fire department, but I can't give them an address. My GPS is not working here, and for some reason they can't track me down. Most of them think I'm joking. I don't have much longer to type here. I can hear something in the wind. It's telling me to come out and it will help me find my way home. It wants to take me to a place where I will always be warm and happy. It feels a bit crazy saying it, let alone typing it. But I'm not going to trust it. I see what it does to us. That old man came back. He was looking right at me, his mouth wrapped up in a snare-like smile that showed blood-covered teeth and rotted gums. Even though it was mostly skull now, he kept leaking that red ooze. I watched as the wind tore him away from the door handle this time. He was dragged through the snow by something in the wind. I couldn't hear it, but I saw his sinister laugh as he clawed at the snow and ice, his fingers leaving oily red streaks of blood as he tried to cling to anything he could. I saw him for one last moment, and fear finally twisted his face as realization and self-awareness kicked in. Then it was quiet, all but the skittering snow that is slowly consuming my entire truck, my entire life, and it has been quiet ever since. I can't make calls anymore, but I keep spamming post on this. Hopefully it will get some shred of bandwidth. I won't go out there. Maybe someone will find me, but probably not. I have 3% battery now, and all I have is the smell of cold air and the whispers of the wind trying to force its way inside. I'm going to try and get some sleep. I'm so cold. If I can, I'll update you. If not, well, stay out of the wind.